You are completely alone.
No. No! I just had an idea for a drawing. Follow me. Picture this. You set up some time to work on your art and you sit in front of the white paper, you prepare some tea, and then you sit down and you're all ready for that creativity to magically come flowing towards you. And then when you see 2 hours have passed by and you didn't draw anything, but you ate 3 snacks, drank 2 coffees, and scrolled on TikTok until your back starts to hurt. Does that sound familiar? Well, you are not alone, my friend. So today I'm gonna share with you how you can come up with original ideas for your art using your feelings as inspiration. Because ideas don't always come instantly in your dreams, right? This drawing right here was created with this process, so yeah, it really works for me, so I hope it works for you too. First, choose a feeling. Maybe it's a feeling you are actually feeling right now or not. You can explore feelings without necessarily feeling them in the moment, you know? I mean, we all felt different emotions in different times of our lives, so somewhere inside of you, you have the memory of other feelings, and that's enough to work with. So maybe you choose sadness, anger, or happiness, or joy, or fear, for example. Choose one to start with, and in my case, I chose fears because it was Halloween last month, and this is when I did this. So yeah, my feeling is fear. Once you decided on a feeling, let's do a quick journaling exercise. Make a list of how this feeling is or was present in your life. So in my case, I chose fear, so I made a list of fears I have or have had before in my life. And it could really be anything because you're starting to travel through more subtle places in your mind. So you don't want to overthink this too much. Just make a list of what comes to your mind related to the emotion that you chose. Another example would be, let's say you chose anger. Then just make a list of things that make you angry, you know? Let me know down in the comments what feelings you've been working on so we can all inspire each other. Now for each item on this list, I want you to write down everything that comes to mind. You have to really let go of control and not worry about if it makes sense or not. It's not supposed to be logical. You just want to let your subconscious mind come up with elements, especially visual elements, and it could really be literally anything that comes to your mind when you think about each item on your list should be down on paper. When you have all your elements on paper, circle the ones you would like to draw, or maybe you just find some of them more interesting than others. Maybe you're curious to see like what does that exactly mean, like how could that go on my illustration? So just circle the ones you like or the ones you're comfortable drawing or you're excited about drawing. At this point, you can start thinking of how you could combine all the stuff you circled into a drawing. Maybe you want to do some rough sketches of ideas, and to do my drawing, I did like 5 drafts before even starting. And even if your idea is not super clear at first, it will come together once you start drawing. You kind of just gotta start, you know? Which brings us to our next step, which is just get it started. I find it so hard to start sometimes, but once I do, I just kind of get in the zone and it's easier to come up with the whole thing. You know what I mean? If I just like power through, it all comes together. What I'm drawing here is an imaginary creature that is sort of a mixture between a snake, a dragon, and a fish. By the way, I'm using a 01 fine line ink pens for most of the inking part, and I'm really obsessed with shading. I actually spent easily, 10 hours shading this drawing. Yeah, I know it takes a lot of time, but I like it. It feels like a meditation for me in a way. And don't be fooled by the idea that I'm doing all of this from imagination, because of course I'm using reference pictures. When I started drawing, I would get one reference picture and draw from that reference to build my visual memory, but all my art was kind of like a copy from a picture. It was really frustrating to me and I felt like an imposter, you know? Maybe you're going through this right now, and I really struggled with like coming up with my own ideas. I would see such creative art from like other people and I would be like, how did they come up with this? How did they think of this idea, you know? So the journaling exercises really helped me to just come up with elements that for some reason have a connection which in our case here is going to be a feeling that brings all of these elements together, but they're really random, right? Like all the things I came up with in the end of the journaling exercise, they're not necessarily connected at all. And I think that's what makes a drawing really interesting, when you like interconnect things that in reality you wouldn't be able to connect. What changed this for me was when I started using more than one reference, because building visual memory takes years and years. So now I try to create an original concept for an illustration, and then I use a bunch of different references so I can still keep it original, I can still keep it creative and something that actually comes from my imagination, but I'm also building my visual memory by using different reference pictures. So just so you know, I'm using snake pictures, I'm using illustrations from other artists of dragons, for example, pictures of fish, and I love betta fishes, like their fins, and they're so flowy and beautiful, so I'm using that as a reference as well. I'm also using pictures of lizards to help me create this texture on the skin, and this cliff part right here was like basically the only part that's actually coming just from my imagination, and this bridge with the little person. I'm sure if I was to use a reference, I could add so much more detail and so much more like shadows, and you know, like if you want to be very detailed with your drawing, it's always great to use a reference, right? Like you get the closest as you can to what it would actually look like if it was a real thing. But I'm actually liking how it's turning out, so I'm just gonna, you know, use my imagination for this part. Now, I really didn't know what to do with the head of my creature, and I still didn't know at this point, but at some point you just kind of have to make a decision in order to finish your illustration, and I think that's kind of like a beautiful metaphor for life.
Nature is amazing.
Oh my god, we're getting so deep into this. Like when you see a grown-up and you're a kid, you totally think that they have life figured out. But like now that I'm a grown-up myself, no one really has nothing figured out. And I think the same thing happens with art. You're not necessarily gonna have it all figured out, and you're not gonna have clarity on what it's gonna look like. And it's kind of like just an experimental process. Just like life, you just gotta try things, and if you don't like it, you do better next time, basically. So yeah, I decided to put like a bunch of eyes on my creature just because I wanted it to be scary, since it's about my fears and, you know, Halloween. I don't really love how it turned out, but you know, whatever. It is what it is. Now, I decided to add color to my drawing, and I never like the results when I add color. I'm so much more comfortable with black and white, you know, but I also love the power of color in art and in movies and the psychology of color. But I just want to give you a disclaimer that right now I'm not an expert on color at all. And if you want to follow along on my art journey, by the way, thank you. But yeah, you will definitely see the process of me growing in the coloring part, because I really want to keep experimenting with this. So I'm using different techniques here. I'm adding layers of colors based on the shadows of my drawing, and I'm using watercolors, markers, and colored pencils. And I'm trying to keep a color scheme that's kind of like blue and red, which I don't know. I don't know if I like it, but whatever. It's an attempt.
Trying is the first step towards failure.
And one of my favorite things in the end is to add white details. Again, I love the black and white. Like, the white makes so much sense. I love adding the extra white wherever the light hits to create more depth and contrast, and I love trying to reach this more 3D type of look in my drawings. And I think the white helps a lot, and it really makes the drawing pop from the paper, in my opinion. I really like doing this in the end. It's also useful if you made a little mistake. You can also like fix little things here and there. I'm using white calligraphy ink with a very thin brush. After so many hours working on this artwork, I ended up realizing that this is really about the fear of loneliness for me that I actually found on the journaling exercise. I think it speaks a lot of the moment I'm living in my life right now, because like with the pandemic, my work became 100% online, and as much as I love what I do and I love working from home, it's pretty lonely. I'm an introspective person. Like, I work better by myself, and I like being alone. I feel very good when I'm alone, but sometimes it's a little too much, you know? So yeah, maybe subconsciously I started this channel so I wouldn't feel so alone. But I think so. Interesting. Well, I guess if you're a lonely creative like me, we already have something in common. And I would love if you subscribe to the channel and became my online friend, I guess. I'm joking, you don't have to be my friend to subscribe. You can just subscribe. I'm joking again. I'm so funny, you know, like that's another reason to subscribe to my channel. Anyway, this is my drawing. I hope you like it. Thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna go now. I will see you next week. Bye.